LeBron. We'll call him out.
You miss playing basketball still ever?
No, never. Not against these cupcakes. A lot of people don't want to be in these waters with the neck down. No. When I was with Reebok, we were never number one, but we were never number three.
I'm telling you, this is going to be very, very important to Reebok's future. Fast forward, and Reebok is almost double since we bought the business.
I wrecked his boat one time. I crashed it. We couldn't move the boat, so we just left it. I got absolutely sick and tired watching the NBA dunk contest.
Well, I didn't go to college either, Jamie.
And you're not that smart.
Wow. I'm from New York. I had to say, my God.
You're a funny guy.
Strike that from the table. Just trying to, have my name around forever.
What's up, everybody? This is Rich Kleiman, and this is our August Boardroom Cover Story. We are live at Fanatics, and today I have the honor to sit with the executive chairman and founder of Authentic Brands, Jamie Salter, and a generational icon, once-in-a-lifetime individual, Mr. Shaquille O'Neal. Welcome, fellas.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Jamie, everybody sees Authentic Brands. It's very much in the zeitgeist now, but tell me a bit of the path of how you got here, and what the original concept was and what Authentic is today.
So look, when we started Authentic 17 years ago, there was other companies that were in the licensing business, and we sort of looked at them and we said, how can we do it better? I always admire Steve Jobs, and he didn't invent the iPod, but Sony did, but he made it a lot better. And I think what was really, really important was, can we build a model that has duration, and can it last a long time? And I think that was the most important part, which means, can we buy brands and make sure that they last forever? And that was the important part. So we sort of had two parts of the business. We had lifestyle and we had entertainment. And entertainment was really important because when we looked at Disney, Disney is a company that really has content. And then that content, drives you to sort of the parks. And then from the parks, you actually buy a lot of merchandise, right? So content drives commerce. And I think that's how we really built the business. And today, the business is about a $42 billion in annual retail revenue. 25% of the business is entertainment-based and 75% of the business is lifestyle.
Shaq, I was talking to LeBron yesterday about prior to his era in the league, there were people like yourself and Magic and MJ that had built business, but it wasn't as rampant without the league where people were focused on business. What was it like when you came into the league? You were a brand coming out of LSU and the world knew you, but what was your mindset on business off the court coming into the league, and what was expected or not expected of an athlete at that point?
Well, just coming in, I wanted to be a basketball player, and I attend the conference with Magic Johnson, and he tells me, make sure you focus on business. I had no idea what that was. Started focusing on business. I can remember going to the Barnes & Nobles and buying the Dummy's Guide to Starting Your Own Business. Then takes him back to my professor in marketing class. He gets on the board and he writes, he started talking about branding. He said there's good brands, there's really good brands, and then there's great brands, and there's brands that live forever. And I always wanted to live forever. And towards the end of my career, I started to see my name fade away a little bit. And I'm walking down the street on Hollywood Boulevard, and there's Elvis everywhere. And there's, Marilyn Monroe stuff everywhere. And I'm like, how do these people live forever? And they've been gone so a while. So started doing my, research on companies. And there was two companies that I came across, this company and another company that's out of business. So when I met with the other company, didn't like it. When I met with him and his son, they had a big argument in front of me. Respectful business, dad-son argument. I was like, I want to be with these guys. So I partnered up with them. For me, it's just about, continuing to, do great business and, just trying to, have my name around forever.
So you said towards the end of your career, you felt like your name was fading away. I would say as a fan and somebody watching from afar, I never felt that. Was that a bit of like a paranoia in some ways? Because when you end your career, there is that feeling of like, I'm not going to be necessarily in the spotlight the way that I was, even though you were Shaq. And what did you change, like, about your approach from what you had to do? Did you become more of a learner and a listener, or did you take that same approach while you played?
I wish my father was still here. He did an excellent job of raising me. He was an Army drill sergeant. Taught me to use fear as motivation. When I first came in, it was Shaq. And then towards the end of the career, they started talking about other people. And it got me a little scared. I agree with you. I wasn't going to go anywhere. But in my mind, I was like, I gotta continue to do this. So, signed up with a bigger and better company because I was doing everything by myself. And when I met with Jamie, he's like, man, you've done a wonderful job, but let me help you take it to the next level. And it's just about continuing to work, continue, to do great things. And the great thing about this partner, he's a great mentor, he's a great teacher, but he listens. I remember begging him 10 years in a row to buy Reebok. He was like, no, we're not ready. I was like, Jamie, we got to get Reebok. And then one day he called me and said, you sitting down? I said, no, I'm laying down. He said, your dreams finally come true. And, he purchased Reebok. So he's a great partner, great mentor.
We purchased Reebok.
We purchased Reebok. Great partner, great mentor, great listener. And, General Dwight Eisenhower said the great leaders are the ones, to have people that are smarter than you around you. One of the smartest businessmen I know. And I just found out a couple of weeks ago that he never went to college. Because, he called me and said, hey, man, congratulating on getting your third master's. I never went to college. I was like, what? He's like, I said, how'd you do this? He said, hey, I just, meet people, shake hands, and learn. So that's what I'm doing with him.
Yeah. Well, I didn't go to college either, Jamie.
You're not that smart.
I did go 3 years of college. I didn't go to school a lot, but I did go to 3 years. I never graduated though.
So the original concept, you were buying brands, right? And then when you look at companies like yours, usually the partnerships they have with individuals or of late icons, like you mentioned Elvis. Shaq was the first partnership that you had. When did you start thinking about moving into that sector of the business, and how did you guys approach that deal?
So, Marilyn Monroe is actually a good start into the entertainment business because what it taught us was social media. And, a guy came into my office, his name was Adam Cronengold, he's employee number 3, and he says to me, by the way, do you know that Marilyn Monroe has 250,000, followers? And of course, back then I said, what's a follower? And he explained to me, you can advertise on Facebook or on Instagram, for free. And you can send messages to all your fans and to, and so I said, well, that's kind of neat. We should build a business sort of around this. Every time we buy a brand, we should focus on social media. And what happened when, we had the opportunity to partner with Shaq, we really looked at the social media and we said, wow, there's a lot of fans with this brand. And more importantly, if we actually take those fans and we get Shaq behind not just the Shaq brand, but get Shaq behind other brands that we own and that we're going to buy, oh my God, we could move the needle. And that was, today they're called creators, okay, and influencers. But back then, we didn't sort of know that. But we thought that we could actually move the needle because, as you know, advertising is incredibly expensive. And we couldn't compete necessarily with the big guys. So we thought by attracting people like Shaq and getting, a partnership with them, and then looking really at the social, we could drive business. And of course, it worked.
Yeah, and how do you structure those deals? Are they the same way that you structure deals with a brand or clothing line that you'll buy?
Well, no. If we buy something like Reebok, Authentic would buy 100% of Reebok. Obviously, Shaq's a second largest independent investor behind me in Authentic Brands. But something like David Beckham or Shaquille O'Neal or Kevin Hart, those are basically 50-50 joint ventures, partnerships, where we are partners together. And, you're never, look, let's be honest, okay? You're not gonna tell Shaq what to do. By the way, Shaq's not gonna tell us what to do either. So we have to agree on what we're gonna do. Are we gonna go into the entertainment business? Are we gonna go into the name, image, and likeness business? Are we gonna go into the merch business? If Shaq doesn't wanna do eyewear with a particular eyewear company, we're just not gonna do that. Vice versa, if Shaq wants to go into, a crypto deal, we're going to say, Shaq, we don't like crypto deals. We don't think that's good for the business. We don't think that's good for you to put your name behind something like crypto. Then we're not going to do that either. Yeah. So it really is truly, a partnership between both sides. And, think of it like a marriage, but there's no divorce clause, right? Like we are married for the rest of our lives. And that is obviously difficult, right? Like being married is not the easiest thing in the world, right? I'm married 39 years, and I think that was important to Shaq, which is, this is a family that he knows and respects, but is this really going to be forever? And here we are. What are we going on now? I think 10 or 11 years. I mean, and we didn't even go through a 7-year itch. Right? Yeah. This has been an incredible partnership because we really are building this company, together. And obviously now we have more partners with David and with Kevin and many more brands, Champion, Guess. I mean, the list goes on and on. We have 50 plus brands in the portfolio. But I got to tell you, he was there at the beginning. And it's been really, really good. And he does have a new idea every day.
Why did you want to buy Reebok so badly?
Because, when I was with Reebok, we were never number one, but we were never number three. So, Adidas purchased them and they just, just kind of diluted them, took all their contracts and just kind of, left them in the fitness industry. And, I wanted to, bring them back. And the toughest job was to, try to get the youngins to remember, what Reebok was. Back to what Jamie was talking about. We have this weird relationship where we come up with crazy ideas 3 or 4 in the morning. He only told me no one time. So I called him at 4 a.m. I said, Jamie, I got a great idea. He said, what? I said, I want to marry Marilyn Monroe. Shut the hell up, Shaq. And he just hung up on me. And I wanted to call it Shaq
By the
Marilyn.
Way, he did send me an AI version of him getting married to Marilyn Monroe.
He's like, Shaq, go to sleep. But no, we have a great partnership. So when the Reebok thing was bothering me, I would call him once a month, Jamie, got to do Reebok. They're not ready. And then we went to F1 and Jamie saw the CEO of Adidas and me and Jamie cornered him and Jamie made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And then a couple of weeks later, Jamie woke me up at 4 a.m. and was like, you laying down? I'm like, yep. He said, we got Reebok.
And you serve as the president of the company?
Yes.
And AI is involved as well?
Yes.
So what have you guys started to do and put in motion to kind of change the perspective on how people looked at Reebok?
Look, I think, we have a saying, let Reebok be Reebok. Let's be honest, Reebok was in sport in a major, major way prior to Adidas buying the company. So when we looked at Reebok, a good portion of their business was in classics and sort of in the fashion world. And they sort of forgot about the sports business. Well, they didn't really forget about the sports business. Adidas really took a bunch of their silhouettes, okay, and took a bunch of their contracts, whether it was with the NBA or whether it was with soccer or whether it was with hockey. But every step that Reebok was going in, Adidas said, no, let's focus on the bigger brand called Adidas and let's pull that from Reebok. By the way, made sense because if you look back in the day, Reebok was much bigger than Adidas. And today, Adidas obviously is one of the biggest footwear companies and clothing companies in the world in sport. So they got really everything that they needed to get out of Reebok. And then they said, okay, fine, we're going to sell Reebok. So the first thing that Shaq said is, we're going back into sport and we're going back in a big way. We're going back into basketball. We're going back into hockey. We're going back into soccer. We're going into lacrosse. We're going into cricket. We're going back into sport. So it's not like, it was that hard because we went into the archives. We started pulling stuff out. Obviously, we have to put a marketing budget together and we have to focus on, obviously the best players and the best teams in the world. And we've been doing that. So Reebok, fast forward, Reebok, I guess we're going on our 5th year now, and Reebok is almost double since we bought the business. It'll do close to $6 billion retail around the world today. And I think Reebok's incredibly respected, since we bought it. It's come a long way, really fast.
And I talked about Jamie being a great mentor. I can remember going in his office asking for a big budget, and he's quickly calmed me down and says, "You're not Shaq. You're Shaquille O'Neal. You're the president of basketball. I'm not giving you a big budget till you prove yourself." So he gave me this size budget, and we had to come up with a new strategy that worked very, very well. Instead of going after the high-profile professional athletes, we started with the youngins, and Angel Reese signed with us. We got a couple of players, and the Angel Reese, she was doing phenomenal. But instead of braternizing me and giving me what I want, he says, "Hey, I'm not talking to Shaq. I'm talking to Shaquille O'Neal, the president of Reebok, and you don't get $50 million for the budget. You get this amount." So that was a great learning experience for me.
It's interesting you say that, because I was going to ask you about your energy. You seem to have this unbelievable rare energy to always be on when people see you. And the problem is people expect that from you. So that's got to be a challenge at times as well. But you also have this name that is going to live on, that is bigger than you, a la a Marilyn Monroe. How much of the time do you still want to be Shaq? And how much of the time would you prefer to be Shaquille O'Neal and let Shaq, the brand, kind of operate as its own?
So I remember when I first came into the league, I was signed with a previous agent and was taking me around to all these image consultants. And they all wanted me to be something that I wasn't. And went to this top image guy, and I was disagreeing with him. He said, "How come you don't like our plan?" I was like, "Because image is reality."
Yeah.
So what you see with Shaquille O'Neal is how I am in real life. I say hi. I help people in need. I take pictures with kids. I don't have an entourage. I handle business. So it's not that I'm acting. This is me from day one. I've been this way ever since my name stepped on the scene in 1989 when I went to a high school. There was only 249 kids, 9 through 12. I had a phase when I was very arrogant, but got really brought back down to earth, and this is how I am. So I appreciate the compliments, but this is not an act. I'm really a nice guy until you test my waters. And a lot of people don't want to be in these waters with the megalodon.
Yeah, I'm not
you see those teeth?
I'm not trying to test. That was scary, bro.
Yeah, that was.
The idea, though, that Shaq and what that means, you understand that the power of that is one of these things now where he may not actually have to be present all the time for how powerful that brand is.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's built an empire, around him with us, and I can tell you that, he's just so smart, right? He goes, we're going back into basketball, and I like telling this story because, and he goes, "I need X amount of money," and I said, that's a lot of money, and you can't. I'm not giving you that kind of money, but we'll give you X. And he came back and he said, "I got an idea." And I said, "What's your idea?" He said, "I want to focus on women. We're going to go into women, to women's basketball, WNBA, right? And I'm telling you, Jamie, there's going to be a surge. You just got to trust me on this." You got to remember, this is 3 years ago, right? WNBA, people weren't really talking about it. And there was Caitlin, and he comes in, he says, "We're going to sign, this player. And her name's Angel Reese, and we're going to sign her up. And I'm telling you, this is going to be very, very important to Reebok's future and to the game of basketball." And I really do think that, Shaq really changed the WNBA because the money that was being paid to the WNBA players was kind of not fair. He believed that she could move the needle for our company, and he could change the way people think of the WNBA. Yeah. And I got to tell you, my hat goes off to him because, women in sport today, 3 years ago, they're making substantially a lot more money, and I think Shaq has a lot to do with that.
It's pretty genius because in a lot of ways you kind of set the bar by doing that for Angel, which then permeates to the rest of the women in the league. Talk about DUNKMAN, which I know Reebok is also tied into and something that you're passionate about. And it started as one thing and now it's evolved into something bigger?
I got absolutely sick and tired of being involved, and as a player and as a fan, watching the NBA dunk contest. My favorite dunk contest was in high school, Dominique versus Jordan. Guys made every dunk. They gave the fans a show. And it was always my sentiment that, us as NBA players, all these kids, these corporate, they pay a lot of money to watch us play. Let's perform. First of all, in the last 15 years, we haven't had a real top guy like LeBron. We'll call him out, Zion Williamson, participate in the dunk contest. And then you got guys missing 3 or 4 or 5 dunks. So we wanted to put a league together. So, I go to my team and say, hey, I want to start a league because, if you look online, that there are kids that are not good enough to be in the NBA, but they're unbelievable dunkers. And they got a lot of views. They get a lot of eyes on them. So I was like, maybe we need to put a league together and compensate these guys. So we got 24 amazing dunkers, England, China, international players, and it's going to be great. I've seen kids dunking better than NBA players. So we're going to put this league together, and I think we start Tuesday, and the winner gets $500,000. And if I see something impressive, I may call Jamie and say, can we put it up to $1 million? Because I know for a fact, when you look at these kids online, it'll be another kid for next season saying, oh, I can do that, and I can do that. And that's what makes this sport great. Because, again, when I went to the NBA All-Star game, forget the All-Star game on Sunday. I wanted to see the three-point shootout and the dunk contest. But for the past 50 years, it's been terrible.
Yeah, growing up, that was just like must-see television. So how does it work? You said there's 24 dunkers, and they'll compete in like remote cities or move around. And
well, we're probably just going to start season 1 in Atlanta, and then we'll probably have the championship somewhere. We haven't announced that, but it'll be dunking against each other, dunk-offs. All the judges were professional athletes, professional dunkers. So it'll be great. I don't want to give you too much, but we start Tuesday, so make sure you tune in.
We're partners with TNT on the media side.
Yes. And Eli Lilly is our biggest sponsor.
Amazing. So there's obviously
And now Dick's Sporting Goods too.
Dick's Sporting Goods too.
There's obviously the ability when you build something like that, when you build a new IP, to kind of utilize the rest of the portfolio of brands. Is that part of
that is definitely part of the ecosystem, which is, our whole mandate with DUNKMAN is, okay, how do we turn this into a league? How do we turn it into a profitable business? But more importantly, how do we help market other brands that are within our portfolio? So Reebok will have a very close relationship, obviously, with DUNKMAN, and some of our other brands will also have a close relationship with DUNKMAN. So it definitely, content drives commerce, and I'm going to continue to say that to you. And look, I think Fanatics Fest is a great example. Michael has done an excellent job at building the Fanatics brand, and he is making some money, along the way. But even if he broke even on Fanatics Fest, it's still a home run because there's just an enormous amount of content, which is driving the overall Fanatics business across his entire portfolio. So I think that's the sort of new world that we're living in, and I think there's few companies that are doing this and being really successful at it. And I think Fanatics is one of them. I think Authentic is one of them. But most companies are pay for play, right? They're not really running a true entertainment content side of the business. And I think that what's interesting is there's very few that are good at it, right? At the end of the day, the ones that are doing it, and I guess it's the studios that you would look at, right? Disney's good at it. Paramount, I would say is, they're okay, right? And Warner Brothers is okay. So I do think that doing this with DUNKMAN, you're going to see us. We have another show coming out with Amazon for Barney's, okay, which is a new show with that's coming out in 2028, which is with the same people that wrote Gossip Girl. So we're continuing to get into this content business.
So you moved up to executive chairman from CEO, and I read that it was to focus a bit more on these type of deals and the overall partnership strategy of Authentic. You have Kevin Hart, David Beckham, and of course Shaq. How many of these can you do?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
Not a lot, because look, you got The Rock out there, amazing. You got LeBron James, amazing. The truth of the matter is, there's a lot of components that go into it, right? You got to remember, you're going partners with these people forever, right? Serena Williams. I mean, I could give you a list, but it's less than 10, and they got to want to do it. We have to want to do it, and it's forever. And I think that we'll do a few more of them, but we're not doing a ton of them. And I know that you know this, like, they gotta want to go to work. I won't mention the gentleman's name, but like, we were going to do business with him, and he's bringing in a lot of money in the business. And I asked him a question. I said, so you're going to get a lot of money from us one day, and we're going to do this deal, and we're going to go 50-50 partners. So what are you going to do, when you get all this money? He says, I can't wait to go to my boat. That is going to be the greatest day of my life. I'm going to go on my boat, and I'm going to just like sit in the sun, and I'm going to have a great time. And I said, it was great to meet you.
But not the right partner.
But you're not the right partner. So you got to be careful, right? Because you are writing a big check, and now you're 50-50 partners with them, and they got to want to work, right? So like, David Beckham is the hardest working man at the World Cup, right? Shaquille O'Neal is the hardest working man, in my opinion, in the NBA, right? Like, I know he's not in the NBA anymore, but he's still a basketball star. I mean, he's on TV, he's doing DJ events, he's doing merch deals, he's doing licensing deals. And I think that is critical. Now, it's got to be in your blood, as you know, right? You either want to do the work or you don't. I get that question asked to me all the time, which is, Jamie, why are you not retiring? You've done fairly well in life. And what would I do? Yeah. Well, like, I don't play golf, right? I love my wife, but like, let's be honest, okay? I love working, right? For me, working is not,
that from the table.
Right? Working is not work, right? For me, it's enjoyment and it's fun. And I think that's what you'll find with Shaquille, and that's what you'll find with Kevin, and that's what you'll find with David. And I think it's important, right? And there's few people, and look, we've been talking to someone that and he's a worker. Yeah. Like, he's a real worker. And I think that's critical, because when you look at Shaq's business, where it was, Shaq's business is 15x of where it was. Okay, we don't even like to tell him anymore, okay, because it's too big for him. Nothing's too big for you, sir, last time I checked. But the truth of the matter is, it's 15 times bigger than where it was when we first started.
Wow. Wow. I'm from New York, I have to say. I mean, my God, shit.
And think, you're a funny guy.
Pause.
But, if you say to Shaq, what's going on? You know what he's going to tell you? I'm in the second inning. We're just getting started. So it's not necessarily about the next Shaq endorsement deal. It's about, should we buy XYZ company together? And I go, Shaq, what do you think of that company? Well, Jamie, I think it's a pretty good company. They're doing $6 billion in revenue. I think we could do $10 billion. Let me tell you why. So he's thinking really, really big. And that's why, this is a great partnership. But there's not too many Shaqs out there.
And for me, it's nice to have somebody that I can talk to. Jamie, I know he's probably not, how old are you? 50?
63.
So he's only 9 years older than me, but his mentality is that of a father. And when I don't know certain things, I can call him. Like, I called him about, every time I see a company going into bankruptcy, I'll call him. And the next day he'll have an old email. Too much debt, they did this, this is why it's not a good idea. So it's like a, teacher moment for me. So never had that before. A lot of times I had to figure things out. But every time I see something, I'll send it to him, and he might not respond. But the next day, him and Jeff, they'll send me a detailed email of why it will work or why it won't work. And that's very important to me.
So I just have two last quick questions for you guys. Has all of this side of your life, business, filled a little bit of the space of what it was like to be an athlete at the highest level, or is that something that was never able to be replaced once you retired?
I'm having more fun. I'm learning more. I'm doing it with the greatest shooter in the world. He would be my Jerry West or my Larry Bird in business for me. And all we do is win championships.
John Stockton.
No, John Stockton hasn't won a championship. No disrespect to John.
Good point. I didn't know we were going championship.
Yeah,
I meant
we're
more size, frame.
We're going. So listen, he's great to be around.
I am taller than Kevin Hart, for the record.
No, he is.
We all are.
He's great to be around. He's honest. We haven't had and we probably never will, we've not had a disrespectful argument, but we have, because he's not going to say yes to everything. I'm not going to say yes to everything. So I don't even want to use the word duke it out because it's not really a duke out, but it's just fun. Again, when I went to the first meeting, him and his son started arguing, like, we haven't even closed the deal yet. And they just, no, yeah. And I told my guy, Danny, I was like, we're going with them. He's like, are you sure? I was like, family. That's family right there. And, the way he treats his boys, how they work for the company, it's just a beautiful thing. So for me, it's just, I don't really look at the business all the time. It's just family. He'll call me sometimes and be like, hey, I'm going to send the plane, come to the cottage, and I'll come up there and he'll treat me like his black Shalomian son, and I'll wake up, there's breakfast. I wrecked his boat one time and I tried to buy him a new one, like, he wouldn't let me buy it. I apologize for that.
Don't worry.
I crashed it. Crashed it.
Rich people problems.
No, because big lake and you're supposed to go this way.
That you were weighing the boat down and you went over a log.
Oh yeah, it got stuck.
What kind of boat was this, man?
It was like a pontoon boat.
But look, it got stuck. So I'm out there, me and my guys in this thing, we're trying to move the freaking boat. We couldn't move the boat, so we just left it. I wrecked this boat and I was like, change them. So
you didn't wreck it, it was fun.
So before we get out of here, I guess for you, Jamie, you're an entrepreneur, like you said. You didn't finish school. You've built this incredible business. But it's got to be really cool to be partners with Shaquille O'Neal, right?
It's the coolest thing in the world. I mean, what's really cool is Livy. Livy's 8 years old, my granddaughter, Corey's daughter. And she's allowed to go onto the internet. When she turned 8, she was allowed to go onto the internet, not only for like 1 hour a day. And she calls me up and she calls me Zadie, and she goes, Zadie, you're partners with Shaquille O'Neal, and he's really famous, and so are you. And I said, how do you know that? And then of course she downloaded all the pictures of all the different interviews that I had and all the different interviews that Shaq had, and she sent them all to me. So, I mean, that for me, that was kind of cool when, you have an 8-year-old that she doesn't even know Shaquille O'Neal played basketball, right? She just knows him. He's a famous celebrity, athlete, good guy, owns these companies, is on TV. He's a big giant DJ, right? And that's 8 years old. And then, Logan, who's 5 years old, all Logan wants, because he collects cards, okay? Thank you, Michael Rubin. You're hurting my bank account. He collects cards. All he wants is a Shaquille O'Neal signed, NBA card.
I get it, man. You miss playing basketball still ever?
No, never.
Never?
Not against these cupcakes.
I think that's a good way to wrap this up.
They're all cupcakes. Write it down, tweet it, Instagram it, Facebook it, I said it.
They're all cupcakes, man. I've always been enamored by partnerships. Jimmy Iovine, Dr. Dre, Kevin and I have started to build something, and I think it's special when you can kind of work on that level, like you said, like a marriage. You two have an incredible, magical partnership. It's been fun to watch. It's been fun to talk to the two of you. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for sitting down for our Boardroom Cover Story. Jamie Salter, Shaquille O'Neal. This is Rich Kleiman, Boardroom Cover Story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My
Appreciate
brother.
it.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
I'll see you again. You gonna let me marry Marilyn Monroe or what?